Welcome in, Warchant TV, Top 40 Countdown. We're getting down. Here we go, the final five. This was a kind of easy one to predict. Before we get started here, as always, just want to remind you to like and subscribe here to Warchant TV and be checking out warchant.com for all the latest. But, of course, you want to stay up to date with what's going on with us. Wake Up Warchant, the Jeff Cameron Show, Seminole Headlines, all that good stuff. Make sure you're locked in. Like and subscribe. By the way, before I introduce the boys, we'll tell you that 6 through 10, you'll see it along the bottom here in a moment. Players that came just before and preceded this top five list, you'll see them scrolling there. Excited about those guys, even more excited about this group. All right, there's the owner. He's Gene Williams, founder, administrator, all that good stuff. There's Irish Chaffel, Corey Clark, my cohorts on Seminole Headlines, and they do some stuff here for Warchant.com as well. And I'm Jeff Cameron, host of the wildly popular Jeff Cameron Show. So thanks for watching. All right, boys, here we go. You see that list there, 6 through 10 is what we did the last time we were together. And as you recall, and if you don't, it was Robert Cooper, Tatum Bethune, Jared Verse, Dylan Gibbons, and Robert Scott. So without further ado, let's get to that top five, and I'm excited about it. Or that top six, if you top five. Fabian Lovett. What am I talking about? We go straight to Fabian Lovett on this top five. I think we all think, obviously, he is going to be huge. You had him low at 10, Gene, so I got to start with you. What is it with your hatred of Fabian Lovett?
Got him at 10. Obviously, I'm dogging the crap out of him there. You're no good, Fabian. I mean, to me, it's just, defensive tackle. It's hard to make an impact. I mean, you got the Dockett's, Travis Johnson's, Wadsworth, guys like that. Simmons. I don't know if he's in that category. I think he's a really good, solid defensive tackle. I like him. I think, unlike Cooper, who I actually think Cooper is your run stuffer. Fabian can do a little bit more maybe in the pass rush game, but I think he's going to have a good, solid season. That's why I had him just outside the top five. We're quibbling here. Tell me why I'm wrong. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Why is he going to be an elite player that's going to be an impactful top five player at the end of the year?
Because he wants to get paid. My man wants to get paid. Here we go, right? I'm going to go ahead and start with you, but I love his versatility, and he had a great camp, and I do think he hey, Florida State's got a couple guys where it's their money year, and it's along that defensive front.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question he's a really talented guy and can have a huge impact on this team, because I really think that's going to be the strength of this defense is up the middle. You have the two defensive tackles, Robert Cooper, Fabian Lovett. Behind them, you've got the linebackers that are improved now with Tatum Bethune, who we had in the last segment. And then the safeties, you got Jammie Robinson, who is first team All-ACC, and Akeem Dent, who they think is going to have a great year. So really, I think it's the combination of that strength up the middle that's going to be so effective for them. But look, I mean, all these top 10 guys could probably be thrown into a hat, but I think, so 10 isn't that big of a difference from 6 or 5. But I think Fabian Lovett probably belongs in the top 5.
We were just looking for a reason to quibble. Corey, I know you love Fabian Lovett as well. So it really is hard when we get to this part of the top 40 countdown, because we all have most of these guys. There isn't an outlier where somebody has this guy at 37. I mean, we're all right there, pretty close to top 10, top 5.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I mean, I don't think he's Broderick Bunkley necessarily, but I think he's a really good football player. I think he's all ACC caliber. And I just like him a little more than Cooper because, like you said, Jeff, I think he's a little more versatile. I think he helps you a little bit more in the pass rush than Robert Cooper will. And, yeah, man, he's experienced. He played really well for long stretches last season. And that's a great anchor to have in the middle of your defensive line.
Coming in at number 4, a player we're all very excited about. Corey, you had him the highest at 3. I had him at 4, right where he ended up. Everybody had him in their top 10. We're talking about Duke Cooper and the versatility there. Gene, I'll come back to you on this. Just what he did for Florida State late at the end of the year last season was give that defensive backfield some hope to be really good. I think we think they're secure with the safeties now. You've got a stud in Duke Cooper. You just have to figure out what they're doing on the other side. Talk about Omarion Cooper here.
I just will never forget that Miami game. You were just like, what happened? Florida State's got a really good cornerback. I mean, he was just doing all kind of things. We haven't seen that in a while. But he continued that through the season. You're like, okay, maybe he was just getting hot. But you know what? We saw it again in the spring. It carried over. So we're seeing the consistency, the growth. He was dominant in the spring. And so, I mean, I think Florida State's got a legitimate star on their hands. The PFF grades back that up too, how well he played down the stretch. And I was surprised when I pulled it up. I didn't realize also he was number 2 on the team in run defense last year, according to Pro Football Focus. So, man, that is a complete player. And the only my concern about the impact he can make, if he's as good as we think he is, our team's going to always go to that other side. Is it going to be one of those, which is great for the defense if they're afraid to throw at him. But if that becomes the case at the end of the day, we go, well, he didn't do a whole lot. Well, he really did, but it may not show up in the stats.
Corey, I know you had him the highest, so I'll let you go next. Talk about why you put Duke Cooper at number 3. Again, we all love this player. We all saw what he means to this team on the back end of last season. It kind of became a game changer for Florida State.
Yeah, I think more than anything the spring. What I saw in the spring, he had a great Miami game. He was the first ACC freshman in 8 years to have 4 PBUs and an interception in one game. He was great in that game. He had a pick against Clemson that maybe set up a score. I can't remember. That game's a blur to me. But the final month of the season, he was really good. And the impact on his defense, I don't think he's a corner that they're just going to avoid completely. He's not Dion Island or anything. But he's good enough that maybe he does take away a third of the field. And that's huge for the defense, man. That's a huge impact. And, yeah, he might be the next thing at Florida State, man. That's what he did in the spring was what convinced me that wasn't – and I didn't think it was a fluke anyway. But it cemented home how good he looked those last 3 games. This might be just who this guy is, and he's just going to get better.
Ira, you had him way down at 8, buddy. Explain yourself. What are we doing here?
I know I like him a lot. I just like some of the other players a little bit more and their impact on this team as opposed to a cornerback. But no, I think he's a tremendous player. The thing that stood out to me was, we didn't get to see him in preseason camp last year. He had some sort of ailment or injury. So he kind of showed he was able to participate late in camp. They brought him along slowly during the season, but midway through the season when he started to get playing time and we started talking to the other players, the way Kevin Noles talked about Omarion Cooper really impressed me because Kevin Noles is a guy who we all saw in the spring before that just blew everybody away. His professional approach, he's a no-nonsense guy. He's the kind of guy that goes in the film room by himself at all hours of the day, works out by himself, is just really trying to be the best, get the best out of every ounce of ability he has. And he said Omarion Cooper is like his twin brother. Like they go watch film together. They go to work out together. So those two pieces together as rising sophomores, I think are really 2 huge building blocks for this defense.
All right, can I stay with you because you also don't like Mycah Pittman, and he's next on our list. If we're going to play the blame game here, Mycah Pittman, by the way, as high as number 2 from Aslan. You had him the lowest at number 10, so Ira, I'll start with you. But Mycah Pittman, by the way, is the only transfer to crack the top 5. So we obviously the staff thinks very highly of what we've seen from Mycah Pittman in a short period of time.
And really, honestly, that was the big reason I didn't have him in the top 5 is because I had a hard time putting any of the transfers that high because we just haven't seen them in a Florida State uniform on a Saturday. That might not be fair. We did get to see him in the spring. But again, I just want to see what they do in a game situation. Mycah Pittman played, was he 3 seasons at Oregon and didn't necessarily light the world on fire, at least 2, didn't set the world on fire at Oregon. Now, I know there were extenuating circumstances, but I want to see it on Saturdays in the fall, not just in the spring. He was very impressive in the spring. I like him a lot. The other factor is, if you go back to Winston Wright, I had Winston Wright higher than anybody else because I think he is going to come back earlier, and I think he's going to take away some of those catches maybe that we saw from Mycah Pittman in the spring.
Yeah, Corey, I have to tell you that I perhaps came away from spring practice the most impressed with Mycah Pittman of all of the new players, of all the players that we were intrigued by, because I really didn't have high expectations for a diminutive receiver. But, man, he fights for 50-50 balls. He wins those contested battles in the air. He is a physical player for his size. Mycah Pittman changed my perspective of him almost instantaneously and really sustained it the whole way. Talk about Mycah Pittman.
First off, I want to talk about this new format where you guys are still on the screen when I get the big part of the screen. So I can see if you're yawning, if you're eating, if you're not paying attention. I like this, man. Keep tabs on you guys. And, yeah, with Mycah Pittman, first off, I also wanted to specify when you guys said no transfers in the top 5, you meant incoming transfers. Because obviously Fabian Lovett's a transfer, Jordan Travis. I just wanted to clarify that. We all knew what you meant, but I just wanted to clarify. But with Mycah Pittman, man, it's been so long since they had a dude that just said, that ball's mine, and I'm going to score. I'm going to go make a play. It just hasn't been part of this receiving corps culture in so long that not only do I think he's going to make an impact on the field with first downs and touchdowns, those are always nice, but maybe he lifts up the other guys to maybe get a little bit of that DNA and that personality in them too. Well, if the 5'10" guy can go snatch it away from the safety, maybe me at 6'4", 210 can go do the same thing. I can start playing with that kind of mindset. I think that does rub off a little bit. It's not going to rub off on everyone, but I think maybe it rubs off on Malik McClain, our Portier, and they become better players because they see the 5'11" guy that has more confidence than anyone and more belief than anyone. On Wake Up Warchant, I kind of compared him to Greg Reed. Remember how Greg Reed just thought he was the best football player on earth? And if the ball's in his hands, he's going to go score. Mycah Pittman hasn't done enough yet to get Greg Reed on the field comparisons, but the way he was in the spring made me think of Greg Reed and how every time Mycah Pittman had the ball or the ball was thrown to him, he thought it was his, and he's supposed to go make that play.
Gene, we both had him in the top 5. I had him as high. I think I had him at 2. I was blown away. I just got done describing them, but I kind of understand Ira's reasoning too, where you're hesitant a little bit to take a guy that's never played it down for Florida State and insert him in the top 5. You had him at 5. Talk about what you saw from Mycah Pittman.
Well, to me, and I'm not trying to dog Mike at all. I mean, I think he's a really good wide receiver, but I think usually if you would have seen an elite receiver at Florida State who's number 3, you're thinking big-time player here. He hasn't proved anything. To me, this is also a function of how bad the receivers were last year by eyeball test, by any metric. They were horrific. Maybe the worst wide receiver core I've ever seen. I don't know if Corey agrees with me. He's seen a lot of them, too, over the years. It was the worst bunch I've ever seen. Just bring in somebody who's competent, who's above average. It's going to have a massive impact on this offense. So from my perspective, I agree with everything you guys have said, man. He's got some dog in him. He showed off in the spring. I really like what I saw. But also the fact, man, you're adding a quality player to a unit that was one of the worst, if not the worst, in the Power 5 last year. So that perspective, he is going to make a huge impact.
Jammie Robinson is next on our list at number 2, and this was such a no-brainer. Everybody voted him very, very high. I think it's such a relief for us as Florida State fans and those that have to do the analysis, everybody involved in covering Florida State. It's nice to feel like you're going into a season for the first time in a long time where the safeties, at the very least, we think are going to play at a high level, and Jammie Robinson's a really big part of that. I could panel this thing because I think we all really think very highly of Jammie Robinson and the season he's going to have. Corey, I'll come back and start with you. Talk about Jammie Robinson's impact on this secondary.
Yeah, man, I don't know what else to say other than he's really good, and he's the only first-team All-ACC guy that's coming back. He's one of – he could be one of the best safeties and one of the best returning safeties anyway in the country. I mean, you have a guy that led your team in tackles and interceptions. And the defense, I don't want to say took off. That's probably a little too polite. The defense got much better, significantly improved when he got to the back end. That became a game changer. All of a sudden, you don't see just wide swaths of field with nobody there. He knows what he's doing back there. He's a good communicator. I think he's a good leader. He's physical, and he's smart. Like, he's got everything you'd want in a safety. And what he did last year, especially the second half of the season, was really pretty remarkable, man. And he finished it off with an 18-tackle, 1 interception game against Florida. I mean, you don't have games like that all the time. This guy's I think he's a pretty unique dude, and it's a huge benefit for all the guys on that defense, the whole team really, but all the guys on the defense to have somebody with that experience and that kind of talent coming back.
He's viewed as a leader too, and because he's vocal and because the way he interacts with his coaches and the way he interacts with Mike Norvell, I think is a great influence for some of the other guys on this football team to look up to. Like, I think once he bought in, whenever that happened, maybe his role changed to a point where it was a little more clear cut, and then the confidence grew. But somewhere along the way, he became a guy who knew he was a leader on this defense and knew he had to be communicative and knew he had to lead by example and work hard every day. You saw it again in the spring. And Ira, I'll come to you here. I just really think that he's a great extension of the buy-in from, that Norvell has with some of these guys, and he needed to have it happen on defense, especially because that first half of last season was a nightmare, and he got it with Jammie Robinson.
Yeah, he's definitely an alpha. I mean, he's one of those guys that everybody else rallies around, everybody else looks to, and he carries himself like an adult. Some players, even when they're super talented, carry themselves like kids. He carries himself like an adult, and guys respect him. The one thing I wanted to say about Jammie Robinson is, Florida State fans need to be really happy he came back. I think we all remember at the end of the Florida game when he had that 18-tackle game in the press conference, the vibe I had from him that night was, man, he ain't coming back to Florida State, because people kept asking questions about the future for Florida State's defense, and you could tell he was thinking, well, I'm not going to be here. He really was looking to go jump to the NFL. I don't think his evaluation was what he wanted, and I think Florida State's coaching staff did a really good job of explaining to him the opportunities if he came back and worked on some things of his game. I also think they found, the NIL opportunities made it more possible with him. That's a situation. He's maybe a poster boy for guys who would have left and just taken their chances to get some money for their family. Don't really worry about when they're drafted, just because they need to go help their family. But he had opportunities, the NIL related opportunities in Tallahassee in college, so he could meet those needs and still stay for his senior year. So I'm really looking forward to him having that senior year, that opportunity. And I think it's a real big thing for this defense, because it would look a lot different if Jammie Robinson wasn't coming back.
Gene, you had him at number 2. We both love that he's a sure tackler, and he's very, very physical. And that's interesting. If you want to expound a little bit, we've seen some evidence lately that the NIL, both with current members of this team and now recruits, seem to have perhaps their stuff in order. We're starting to see some tangible benefits, and Jammie Robinson might be one of those.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more of this of players who were, fringe draft picks, undrafted free agent type guys it's more beneficial for them financially to stay another year. And maybe even improve their game and get a higher draft pick down the road, but you're not killing yourself financially by staying another year. You can put a little money in the bank, so that's a big deal. And to me, Jammie's the guy, man, how bad that defense was in the middle in 2020, the first half of 2021. And man, once he put his stamp on that defense in there, suddenly guys were not running wide open. There were being sure tackles made in the middle of the field. And it's kind of Corey likes to say it's the rising tides lift all ships. I think the whole defense kind of rallied around that, and he's raising the level of the whole defense. I mean, he is incredibly impactful. If it wouldn't be for the quarterback, he might be number 1, but when you've got a returning quarterback and so much surrounded on Jordan Travis, he did number 1. But I would really have no problem if somebody voted him number 1 over on this team, because I think he's that important to that defense.
Well, two things.
I thought Corey just created iron sharpens iron. This one too.
Well, what
I've got a lot of it, man. I've got a lot of it.
I hear that on Wake Up Warchant. I'm one of the ones. I think that's after iron sharpens iron. I thought you were going to bring up on Mycah Pittman, Corey. I'm surprised you didn't roll that one out.
No, I was waiting for somebody else to
Okay.
do it. I get tired of saying my own phrases over and over again. I like other people to do them.
I was just about to say, I love the way that Gene reached back into the tool bag there and found some extra Corey quotes, because you have 4 or 5 of these sayings that are unique to you that nobody else.
Tell you guys about the footprints in the sand.
Yeah, no, that's next time.
That's okay. I'll do that next time. All right.
Save it for the next top 40. It'll be exciting. We have something to look forward to next year.
Right.
And then I think the other thing that Gene did there was steal my thunder by revealing who our number 1 player is. Listen, what I'm going to do, the guy owns the company.
That is a surprise.
But it is devastating that I didn't get that moment in the sun to tell you the big reveal as to who's number 1. But hey, again, I defer to Gene here. It is indeed Jordan Travis. Now, a little bit of pressure on Jordan Travis, to say the least, not just because as he goes, Florida State likely goes on the season, but he's our first unanimous number 1 since Cam Akers in 2018. Cam's a pretty good player, Jordan. You're going to have to step up your game here a little bit here. If you're going to be a unanimous number 1, you're going to have to not be pussyfooting this season. We're going to have big things, all ACC type stuff. Where do we think, I'm going to start with you, Gene, where do we think Jordan Travis is in terms of ranking of ACC quarterbacks by season end? Does he crack the top 5 quarterbacks in a quarterback-driven league?
Yeah.
Have a lot of returning quarterbacks. Where do you think Jordan Travis is by season's end?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because you're not talking how good he could be on the whole, but the ACC is stocked with a lot of really good quarterbacks. At least one of them Pitt's out of there, but still there's a lot of good ones. I will say, look, everything is laid at the feet of Jordan Travis right now. If it's going to happen, this has got to be it. Man, a lot of things I look at, how well he played at the end of last year, the last few games. I mean, I was surprised 3 of the last 6 games he graded out at 89, 89, and 90 in passing. I'm not talking about running overall offensive grading, just passing. Now, he doesn't need to grade out, but if he consistently get in the 70s and be an above average passer, that'd be huge for Florida State. I think there's no doubt we can talk about, I think the offensive line is better. At least it's deeper. That's going to help him. We talked about Mycah Pittman, Wright, Johnny Wilson, Pokey coming back, some of these other younger guys stepping up, Portier, guys like that. He's got everything there in front of him to take that next step, to be a top-notch ACC type quarterback. And if it doesn't happen at this point, we may be having another quarterback in the top 5, because if he doesn't do it this year, they're going to have to change what they're looking at. But I mean, it's there for him. And I think seeing the improvement in the spring, seeing the improvement at the end of last season, I think he has the ability to crack that top 5, maybe right at number 5, Jeff, but I think he's got a shot to do it.
We all know that if Florida State is to have the kind of season that ensures this staff stays intact, Mike Norvell's career continues here at Florida State, that Jordan Travis is going to have a good year. I think he's got to be a top 5 quarterback in the ACC if they're going to get to 8 or 9 wins, which is what I think the stated goal for most of this fan base is this year, is this big step forward, not just a winning season, but like a significant step forward. The key there is that it does look like he's primed Ira to have his best season by far. He's put on weight. He's the unquestioned starter. He's become a leader. You know, we always hold our breath with his health, but the offensive line should be better this year. It's not a great receiving core, but they did get him help. What do you think the key here is, or the catalyst will be for him to crack that top 5 in the ACC as a quarterback and a leader of this team that obviously hopes to win 8 or 9 games?
You know, I was listening to Corey Naslin on Wake Up Warchant, and Corey made the comment about, you know, he could be a guy that puts up 300 to 350 yards a game of total offense between passing and rushing. And I'm not sure he could get to 350 a game, certainly not as an average, but I think he could be in that ballpark. And I really think the key to your question is the offensive line. You know, you look at what Alex Atkins has brought in here to kind of happen subtly. You know, in the spring, we were not very impressed by the offensive line, by what we were seeing. And then they went out and got 3 more transfers to come in, and a couple of them very late in the process. They now have 8 offensive linemen on this roster who have a lot of college experience. So when you go into a season, the last several years, the coaches will talk about, we just got to find 8 guys. And this wasn't just Alex Atkins. This was the offensive line coach before him. It was Greg Fry. Everybody wants to get, can we get 8 guys that we could rotate if we need to on the offensive line? This year, they have 8 guys who have played a lot of college football, including several guys who have started a lot and several redshirt seniors or 6-year seniors. So I think the offensive line is going to be pretty good. I think the running game is going to be very good. And I think that's going to help Jordan Travis really develop into, I think you're right, man. I think he can be one of those top 5 quarterbacks. There's a couple of guys who are going to have higher completion percentages, but when you factor in the running, like Corey said, and he's a dominant player.
He certainly can be, and the offensive line goes an awful long way in doing that. And hearing Ira talk about that, then you find the balance, and you can keep a defense on their heels. You're not constantly behind the chains. I don't know, Corey, if Jordan Travis is ever going to be the kind of drop-back passer where on 3rd and 7 or more, he's going to fit it in a window when a defense knows it's coming. But you've got to be able to create that balance, and a better offensive line can do that. And then mediocre receivers have a chance to succeed because the defense has to play you honest.
Well, also, don't get in a 3rd and 7. You don't have to worry about it. Get in a 3rd and 2 or 2nd and 1. That helps. Score a touchdown on the first play. Look, man, when you talk about Jordan Travis, his last 7 starts last year, they went 5-2. And their 2 losses were at Florida and at Clemson, games they very easily could have won, and he was pretty good against Florida. The problem with Jordan Travis, in all our estimations, I think, is there were 3 drives he didn't play against Florida because he was hurt. He was banged up. And that's my only concern with him. If he's on the field, he will be good enough for this offense to score 33, 34 points a game, and they're going to win 8 games if he's on the field. That's a big if, though. If you could tell me today, right now, Jordan Travis is going to start all 12 games and finish them, play 12 games, I would bet Brady's life. Well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say my life, and then I was going to say Brady's, and I went in a real dark place there. I would be very confident. That's probably a nice way to put it, that Florida State would win 8 games if he plays all 12.
And don't jump straight to betting.
Last year.
Can you just bet the mortgage? I mean,
I was just going to say, can we not go straight to betting people's lives?
Yeah.
Can we go?
Who takes that bet?
How about $10,000? How about $5,000? How about we just go ahead?
The mortgage payment, a paycheck, whatever. Jordan, that game against Florida, he threw for over 200. He ran for over 100. Against Miami, he threw for 280. Against Boston College, 250. Now, again, these aren't Jameis Winston 13 numbers, but they're solid quarterbacking numbers from a passing standpoint on top of what he does running, which is next level. It's the best running quarterback they've ever had. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in the country. Can
I just throw in one last thing, Jeff?
Yeah.
On that point he made about the Florida game and when Jordan had to come out of the game, the difference this year, I do think, and you've made this point a lot, is that Tate Rodemaker looks like a serviceable backup at this point, a lot closer to it. I thought the biggest mistake they made in that game, in my opinion, was going back to Mackenzie Milton. I felt like midway through the season, we saw that was done, needed to move on. If they had just gone with Tate in that situation and just kind of let him hand off a few series, I think they would have been better off and maybe still in position to win that game. I thought going to McKenzie was a disaster. So this year, if those situations arise, I think he's going to stay healthy. But if those situations arrive, I think they have at least one guy, maybe two, who at least doesn't just give the game away during that period of time.
Yeah, to your point, if he got hurt last year, the game was over. You know, outside of the one game against Notre Dame where McKenzie Milton came in and made some plays, basically over time we learned, unfortunately for McKenzie, that injury was too much to overcome. And he just didn't have the ability to step into throws and really push off. And so I think that really it was a moot point. Once Jordan went out or missed time, if McKenzie Milton was playing, you were going to lose the football game. That is no longer the case. It's a good point to make here. In a weird way, it's not a weird way at all. I hope, obviously, Florida State dispatches of Duquesne in a timely fashion so that midway through the second quarter, you're talking about which backups you're playing to start the third and fourth quarters. I think it's important to get Tate Rodemaker some time because Jordan Travis does run a lot, and they need him to run a lot. He's going to have a series or two occasionally, maybe best case scenario, where he gets dinged and maybe misses a series. You got to know that it's not a foregone conclusion that you're going 3 and out or turning the ball over, that you might have a guy that can engineer a drive that flips field position at the very least. I don't need Tate to come in and dominate. He just can't be an instant turnover. He can't be a deer in headlights. He can't be 3 and out. It's got to be that you have an opportunity to still build on something. And again, convert a few first downs, give your defense a rest. We'll see. Now, that's a big if. We need Jordan to stay healthy. Bottom line is, if Jordan Travis misses time, as Corey alluded to, then Florida State season is going to take a turn for the worse. And we know how intricate and how important this season is for Mike Norvell's staff and really for everybody associated with Florida State. So that's our top 5. Once again, it was Fabian Lovett, Duke Cooper, Mycah Pittman, Jammie Robinson, and Jordan Travis. A reminder, Wake Up Warchant, Seminole Headlines, and the Jeff Cameron Show. Make sure you're locked in. You get that Warchant app. They're all housed right there, nice and neat for you. You don't have to miss it. Check back on warchant.com for the latest in content. And, of course, all the shows have all of this covered. Hit that like button, everybody. You know the deal. Our thanks to Tom Lang, for Ira, and for Corey, and for Gene. I'm Jeff. Thanks to all of you for watching.